Ecigs.co.uk, sponsors of the Haze Hour.
Well, hello, good evening, welcome along to the show. Tonight, I have to say, it's a Keith-free zone. He's out playing with somebody else's organ tonight and unfortunately couldn't make it. He dropped in earlier on to drop in his apologies, if you like, and said to say hello to everybody. So, hello to everybody from Keith. Bit of a different show tonight. I am actually backed up with kit. There is so much stuff to look at, so much stuff to talk about, and I've got a half hour's worth of Professor Robert West going through the latest figures from the Smoking Toolkit survey with reference to e-cigs. And it's a mixed bag, but I know a lot of people were interested in what had come out of that and didn't quite get where it's all going. So there's points to ponder tonight. We'll be kicking off after the titles with a gander at Formaldehydegate II, the insurrection. And then you lot have a choice. And you've got there's a load of kit. I want to know what you want me to look at. There is the E-leaf iStick 30 with the GSR. We can look at those together and separate. I've got both versions of the Ego 1. One clued up and teamed up and sorted out with a 1 ohmati and one with the half ohmati. So they're there to look at. There is the sub-tank Nano and the sub-tank Mini. I don't want to tread over everybody else's toes, but I also have, go to that camera, David, a Vapor Shark DNA 40 with the big butt and all the bits and bobs. So I need to know what you want me to look at, and it'll all be typed in chat. Now, we're trying something a little bit clever tonight as well, because I've got Sav in my ear. I know it doesn't look like it. Stop laughing, Sav. But we're going to try and do this like proper telly people do, so that I've got a little voice in my ear saying, "Get on with the titles, you fat freak!" And she just bloody said it as well. So I'd probably better get on with the titles if I can remember how to do it. And here they come now. So hello, good evening, and welcome to the Haze Hour. Yes, indeed. And I see Leanna Lawless says she wants something other than an iStick Mini or a DNA 40, so I'm going to send one of the lads round to give you a good hiding pet. It's the easiest way to go. It absolutely has to be. Hey, but news. Now, I'm here to tell you, I'll go to that one because it's better. I'm here to tell you that had Jane Ellison last night not made the announcement that she did about plain packaging, the brown sticky stuff quite probably would have hit the worry thing as far as the newspapers were concerned over Formaldehydegate II, the insurrection. For those of you that are not aware, the New England Journal of Medicine published a letter from 5 researchers who purported to have found 5 to 15 times the cancer risk, lung cancer risk from formaldehyde out of e-cigs than you would get out of cigarettes. Now, first things first, if you're new to vaping and that worries you, please don't be worried, because it's bullshit. It is a crock, a pile, a festering pile of fetid dingo kidneys. I would refer you to Clive Bates's blog, the link towards which will be shoved in towards the end of the show, from which there are links out to all of the proper literature on this. But even the researchers themselves pointed out that in actual fact what they had published was not conclusive when they were pressed on it, and it is indeed far from conclusive. The fact of the matter is, what they decided to do was pick the very worst piece of kit they could think about, in this case a CE4, apparently a Silabo CE4 top coil, and they overdrove it. Now, anybody that's ever used a CE4 of any description knows those things do not function above 3.7 anywhere close, 3.7 volts that is, anywhere close to nicely. And the fact of the matter is, formaldehyde inhaled is foul. And it's all to do with things like dry hits. Now, we've got to put our hands up and say that we knew about this on Monday night, and Dr. Farsalinos knew about this on Monday night, and this was what he had to say about the phenomenon of the dry hit.
The dry puff phenomenon is pretty consistent in terms of the temperature where you can feel it. And right. I'm very close in defining at what temperature you're starting to feel the dry puff. And this is extremely important for the study on aldehydes, because my main goal is to expose all this research on aldehyde that they are finding huge levels of formaldehyde in unrealistic conditions. So by defining at what temperature you start to feel the dry puff as an experienced vapor, then we are going to test the device at this temperature and at lower temperatures. And we are going to see the difference in aldehyde production. So we are going to report probably high numbers of formaldehyde, but the main reason is to tell them that these high numbers are coming from conditions in which no one is using the e-cigarette, because no one can withstand the dry puff phenomenon and this harsh, unpleasant taste of the burning liquid.
That was Dr. Farsalinos. Now, in amongst all of this thing, I've been following this around all day on Twitter, and I think I should point out, as somebody else pointed out, and I'm going to say it in exactly the way it was said, and that person is in chat, take credit for it. Even while all of this was going on, Formaldehydegate II, the insurrection, was happening, there was a dirty great big pile of vapors that were so bothered by it, they were talking about tits. The feathered variety, I think, or they might not have been. I was one of them. The fact of the matter is, it's one of the biggest piles of crap you'll ever come across. Everybody that vapes is vaping safely. Trust me on this one. Nobody, but nobody, is regularly inhaling anything like decent quantities, for want of a better phrase, or dangerous quantities of formaldehyde. It just doesn't happen, because the minute, the very, very second that you get to that dry hit, dry puff phenomenon, you stop. We've all been there, we've all tried it, especially if you've got a tank that's got a metal, outside to it, and you can't see that it's run out of juice, and you go for a hit and realise, you go, oh God, no, dry hit, need to fill it. Everybody does that. Everybody's been there, we've all tried it, and you just won't go there. Completely unrealistic. So it's been debunked left, right and centre. I would very, very much suggest that you go to Clive Bates's site. There are links there off to see what Dr. Farsalinos has said, to see what Peter Hayek has said, to see what Michael Siegel has said, and a whole host of other people. The fact of the matter is, it's bullshit. Word of the day, bullshit. And I think quite honestly, that's as much as we need to do about that. So, Sav's been telling me what you want me to look at, and apparently Ego 1 is coming up head of the list. Is that right, Sav? Ego 1 or subtank. So what I'll do, I'll start by looking at the Ego 1, shall we? Ego 1 first to start with. Let's go to closely up. We'll go to closely up you can, and we'll have a look at the Ego 1. And here it comes. Right, there we are. Both of them here. Now, size-wise, let's do the sizey thing first. And probably get your head out of the way, David. And probably the easiest thing to do is to bring in an 18650, because most people know what size an 18650 is. So there's the 18650 in grey, alongside the 1100 milliamp hour Ego 1, this one here. This is the 22 here, right? And you can see there's not a lot of difference between an 18650 in terms of the length of the Ego 1's body. Come back. I will get used to doing this. There you go. 18650 and the 1100 Ego 1 body. There's not a fat lot of difference. Alright, so let's go from there. Let's get rid of the 18650 and put this back. Well, no, let's not. Right. Aside from the difference in capacity, the two are quite similar. So let's do this one because it's easier to kind of show you around, and we'll start at the top. The first thing that struck me as being strange when it's called an Ego 1 is it's not an Ego connector. It's a 510 connector. Look, with 4 dirty great big air slots in for devices that require it. Here we have the fire button, which I've got to be honest is a little bit wobbly, right? There's a bit of slogger. You might be able to see it as hang on, I need a pointy thing. I'll use this. You can see that there's a little bit of laxity in the switch, but that said, it works very, very nicely. You can also see that it doesn't stick that far out. All right, so the movement is quite slight. It's obviously a micro switch that's under there, and that's the way that one works. But charging. Now, I know Richard Prune is in chat, and I know Tom Prune's in chat, and I know there's a fair few other people that have got a lot of information and know about charging. Look, it is micro USB chargeable. That I really, really like. Charge time on this 1100 milliamp hour battery is around about an hour and a half in my experience, from flat as a fart. On the 2200 it's taken around about 2 hours. That's it. That's all you've got. There's a little vent hole down at the bottom there, but there's venting here as well, and venting out the side of the switch for those people who think they might want to have that. That is a neat little unit, that is. That's a very, very neat little unit. And it's kind of man-sized, I suppose you would say. Comes in other colours as well. Here's the top. Now, it ships with 2 drip tips. You can either have this clear one, or, he said, opening a box on screen, as you do. This is the box with all... I never do these unboxings. Have you ever had one of those days? Right, try this one. The one with the weight in. Right. Try again. Now back to closey up you can. Closey up you can. Closey up you can. Closey up. Oh God, now what's gone on? I've got a graphics problem. I don't know why. Has it? Has it? Oh great. Is sound getting through? Okay, I'll restart the machine or see what's doing it. How far had I got?
You were just taking the second one out of the box.
Graphics problems being... Okay.
Now it's gone again.
Yeah, I was flicking it backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
That better?
Yeah.
What? Right, are we back live? Can people see us? 42-inch shot of Dave's here. Ah, dearie me, I do apologise. I'm sorry about that. Now, where was I when it went? I was opening the second box. Right, let's go close you up, you can, and look at the second box where we were. Don't you just love it when a plan comes together? Here is the second box. Keep your heat out the way. Right. And we'll take that out of there, chuck that out of the way there, and start emptying this out so you can see what you get. And here are, because I've got the two, I've hidden everything out of the way sort of style. Rustle, rustle, rustle. How the hell? It's finding, there you go. Sticky envelopes. Is it? How far out to sink? Okay. 1, 2, I shall clap. Has it all gone to hell? Okay. I tell you what we're going to do. And if this is coming out like a Chinese dubbed movie, I do apologise. I think probably if it's that bad, the best thing I can do, he said switching to that camera, probably the best thing I can do is to, see, it's in sync coming to me. Can you check it on 720? I really am sorry about this, but when technical issues hit us, they don't half seem to hit us. And as somebody in chat said, you can tell Kate's not here. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And Kairulian say Lorian says she's hearing before she sees. Ah. Right, I'm seeing perfect sync here. So, right. Well, I'm going to be doing a lot of closey-uppy stuff, so we'll just carry on with that, right? Closey-uppy stuff, so it really doesn't matter, and I'll try and hold points for an awful long time. So back to closey-uppy can. Right, there is the alternative mouthpiece. Let's put that in so that you can see. Standard 510 size, and you've got your choice. The metal one is a slightly narrower bore than the acrylic one, which gives you, obviously the acrylic one gives you better airflow. You will have noticed the coil. I'm making a mess here. This is exactly what you would expect to see as a coil. One thing I do want you to see though, so I'll have to take this to bits so you can see it properly. Be really good if I could get a grip, which I'm about to do with the ubiquitous nappies. I just love it when I get thrown. Alrighty, so if I head out the way, David, if I undo this and take this coil out and therefore get my hands all covered in juice, the one thing I do want you to see, and this is a 1 ohm coil, you get 2. Look at the size of the air channel in that. It's massive. The air channel is fabulous. So you can really get good airflow, especially over the 0.5 ohm coil. And as you can probably work out, it's bottom fill. So you're filling around the air tube. So let's screw that back together and put it back together. We'll just dry it off a touch, and it actually all fits really nicely. Now for those that are interested, it'll also take the mini Nautilus, which is around about the same size. It will also take a 19mm, well, it's a 19mm, so anything that's 19mm at the tank will work quite nicely. The only other thing I want to show you is the airflow. Now I don't know whether you can see very well, but there's a little knoblet that sticks up around about there, just a tiny little wee sticky uppy thing that stops the airflow control from going too far, and it will go from tighter than a nun's chuff up to as slack as a Hendon lass, basically. Whichever way you want to work it, there's loads and loads of airflow. Now, at the risk of audio being out of sync with video, I probably need to go to one of the other cameras so you can see them in use and see the differences between the half and the 1 ohm. Right, so here we go onto that camera there. This is the 1 ohm. It comes with two. There are two, if you like, atomizers available for it. There's a 1 ohm and there's a half ohm, and the half ohm is very wide in the bore so that you can get more airflow through, and it's more intended, I suppose, it's there so that you can, if you wish, lung it. The 1 ohm's got a narrower bore, so it's less easy to lung. But what I'm going to try and do is keep the counts at the same time. We'll start with this 1 ohm, and I'll try and inhale the same way both times and try and keep the count. I counted 8. That's the 1 ohm. Let's give it another one. So there you go, that's the 1 ohm one. Now let's try the half ohm one. 0.5 of an ohm on a battery that will take it. Same thing. Wow, there is a hell of a difference. This is 18 milligram pure VG in this half ohm, and I'm here to tell you it bangs it out on full airflow. And that really does produce, if you like a lung inhale, that's going to get you where you want to go. We'll take, bollocks. Right, I'm going to restart Wirecast. Oh, it's got it again. Streams up and streams down. I tell you what, I need a vape. I wonder whether it thinks we're playing a John Cave song. Is it back in sync now? I doubt it somehow. Never mind. I am going to say that the half ohm really bangs it out, and I've run the half ohm on the smaller battery. There's no difference in terms of performance. It works really well. Look, we'll take a quick blast of adverts and see whether things are going to sort them out during the course of that video, because when we come back I want to go into the Robert West interview. It's on video, so it should all be in sync. If it isn't, then I'll redo the whole thing and I'll make sure everything's in sync and put it up for video on demand. So 2 sets of adverts in one lump. We'll be back in 5 minutes or so.
Ecigs.co.uk, sponsors of the Haze Hour.
Often imitated, never duplicated. Award-winning service and products from cloud9vaping.co.uk.
Vapers, do you love discovering new e-liquids? Tell Dripper the types of flavours you like and they'll send you 5 gourmet juices each month. Experience new and exclusive flavours, all with a money-back guarantee and free delivery anywhere in Europe. Dripper.co.uk.
Happy Vape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and e-liquids. Proud sponsors of vaping entertainment on Vapor Trails TV.
What's in this e-cig cloud? Harmless water vapour, right? Pretty much, yes. Compared to a lit cigarette, it's much safer than smoke. But it contains nicotine, and nicotine on its own isn't toxic and doesn't cause cancer. If you're worried about switching to vapour, here are some facts. No tar, no smoke, no burnt tobacco. Cooking your evening meal produces more toxins than are found in exhaled vapour. Tobacco smoke contains toxins at very high levels, and vapour does not. And that vapour contains 6,000 times less carcinogens than cigarette smoke. Electronic cigarette vapour. There's nothing to be frightened of. The only dangerous electronic cigarette is a banned one.
Ecigs.co.uk, sponsors of the Haze Hour.
RY4 Radio.
Joytech UK are proud sponsors of vaportrails.tv.
Ecigs.co.uk, sponsors of the Haze Hour.
And we're back in the room. I'm hoping everything's in sync. I really am. It really needs to be. We're bang on 9:30 here. This interview that I've done with Robert West, thank God I pre-recorded it and we're not doing it live, given the way the stream is acting up tonight. It's well worth a watch. Let's go straight into it, because I think a lot of people need to know this, and a lot of people need to know that there are actually academics out there that are really quite keen on e-cigs, and you'll see why that's the case. Enjoy. Now, this new set of figures, are we looking at encouraging figures for e-cigs, or where are we?
I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. Overall, e-cigarette use is down, but the group for whom it's down is in people who are also smoking. So that would be the dual users. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I guess from a public health point of view, what we want is for people to be stopping smoking in whatever way they do it, and obviously e-cigarettes are proving a useful route out of smoking. So the fact that e-cigarette use in people who are trying to stop smoking and succeeding is still up a bit, I think is good news. Mixed.
Oh, okay. Now, there are a couple of issues here, I think, with definition where a lot of people get confused.
Yeah.
Now, I think I'm right in saying when you say stop smoking, you mean stop lighting cigarettes and inhaling the fumes therefrom,
That's right.
Not being nicotine abstinent.
No. So I use, like my colleagues, I use a definition of smoking as in smoking, which is smoking tobacco cigarettes. So, for example, even back in the old days when nicotine replacement therapy first started, there would be some people who'd say, well, if they're still using a nicotine patch, does that really count as stopping smoking? And the answer is, of course it does. It's because it's not smoking.
Okay, that's the first definition out of the way. So as far as the smoking toolkit survey is concerned, stopping smoking just means not using cigs but still using nicotine.
It could be using nicotine patches, nicotine gum, e-cigarettes, Champix. That's correct. Anything other than smoking.
Okay, right. The next definition that I think people want to know is, what is a recent ex-smoker? And the reason I'm asking this question is because there are certain personalities in the United States of America that are complaining, I think, that they're seeing people relapsing from abstinence but relapsing to e-cigs rather than lit tobacco. You're shaking your head there.
No. I mean, I'm sure there's some people. I mean, that's but it's not typically what you see. But also, obviously, even if you did, when you're people need to understand, and I'm sure your viewers understand, that when people stop smoking, there's a risk of relapse pretty much until the end of their life. The risk goes down hugely from week to week in the first few weeks, and then it's pretty low after that. But people still relapse, and so we need to understand that to relapse onto an e-cigarette or a nicotine patch or something that isn't cigarettes is a far better thing than if they were to relapse onto a cigarette. So just even if it were the case that people were relapsing onto e-cigarettes, that wouldn't necessarily mean that this was a bad thing. And in fact, it isn't in any case what we tend to see. So what is a recent ex-smoker? In the smoking toolkit study, a recent ex-smoker is someone who has stopped at some point in the last 12 months. And most of those will have stopped over 6 months ago, as it's just the way it works out, and some of them will have stopped more recently, just in terms of the statistics. So a very important thing to understand is that some of those recent ex-smokers will relapse back onto cigarettes. Quite a substantial proportion will. So we can only look at the sort of short to medium term abstinence using the smoking toolkit study. However, we do have good data from other studies on what the relapse rate is after that time point, and so we can project out into the long term, and I won't go into the details unless you want me to as to what the figures are, but we can use those figures to project out into the long term what the long-term success rates will be.
Okay, it's really complicated stuff. This is.
It's complicated. It's complicated for me. It's complicated for all of us working in the field because we use terms like ex-smoker and smoker. We even terms like e-cigarette user. A lot of people are e-cigarette users, but they may use the e-cigarettes maybe once a week. So are they e-cigarette users or not?
Well, that's the other thing, I really don't want to go too far down this route. Otherwise, we end up slagging personalities off. But this whole notion that somebody that tried an e-cigarette and had 2 drags sometime in the last 30 days, and that qualifies them as being a vapor, I just don't know where that comes from. But that's not a definition within the smoking toolkit, certainly.
No. We use the same definition as we use for smokers, or indeed for people who are using other forms of nicotine. We say, are you currently using an e-cigarette? And then we ask whether they're using it daily or not daily. And if you look at the slides, you'll see about 2/3 of e-cigarette users will be daily users, and about 1/3 won't be. But you're absolutely right. For whatever reason, and one might argue that it's motivated by a need to sort of create sort of scare stories. There is a tendency to report e-cigarette use prevalence, particularly among young people and never smokers. And they say this is the proportion of people using e-cigarettes, but actually the question they asked is often, have they ever used an e-cigarette or tried an e-cigarette?
Yes.
Or indeed, have they used one in the last 30 days? And I have actually asked some of the authors of some of these studies to provide me with the data, or to tell me whether they've got data on current use. And I'm afraid I haven't actually heard back from them. So I don't know whether they have the data but are not reporting it, or whether they just don't have the data, which would be crazy, because that's kind of like what we really want to know is what proportion of people are currently using, and then we can decide what we want to do about that. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yes, I hear that. I really do hear that. I have the feeling, though, that there are certain people who, for whatever reason, do not want to let go of the phrase "we just don't know," and therefore they don't have the data, or they don't want to know the data. But while we're talking about this, we're kind of talking about differences in data, and one of the questions I have seen asked is, how does it work that the ASH survey, the Office of National Statistics figures, show that over the last 3 to 4 years, 700,000 people are no longer smoking lit tobacco, he said, phrasing his words very carefully.
Yeah.
And yet the Smoking Toolkit survey shows us that in 2014, 20,000 people quit, and a lesser number in 2013 and 2012. How does that work? Are there differences in definitions? Why are there those differences?
No, I completely understand how it's hard to get your head around, but the figures that ASH and ONS are reporting are the number of people who have stopped smoking and have used an e-cigarette in that, and so that is the total number. However, clearly you have to then compare that with what that number would have been if they hadn't used an e-cigarette. So what we're trying to do is to estimate what is the added value, what are the numbers over and above what would have happened otherwise of e-cigarettes being in the marketplace. And so, for example, if I give you a sort of parallel example with the stop smoking services, I think it was about 200,000 people will have stopped smoking with the stop smoking services last year. However, we know from other research that a substantial proportion of those, because they're motivated to stop, because they try to stop, and because there are other things that they could do to help them stop, would have stopped anyway, even if the stop smoking services hadn't been there. So what we're interested in is what is the difference between the number who could have stopped and would have stopped otherwise, and the number who we observe stopping with a particular method. And that's how we, when I published the paper on the success rates of the stop smoking services, calculated that figure. And it comes out with a much smaller figure. People may think, oh, well, that seems a bit unfair, because how do you really know, what the numbers would have been? But actually, there are quite good data on it. So what my figures from the Smoking Toolkit study have done is to say, what do we know about the rates at which people have succeeded in stopping smoking, at least in the short to medium term, recent ex-smokers, in the last year, over and above what would have happened if e-cigarettes hadn't been around, bearing in mind that quite a few of those, I know it doesn't feel like it to a lot of e-cigarette users who succeed in stopping because of e-cigarettes, quite a few of those would have actually managed to stop with some other method, whether it's Champix or NRT or just cold turkey, because a lot of people stop cold turkey. So just to sort of encapsulate the difference, the ASH and ONS figures are just the number of people who have stopped and used an e-cigarette to stop, whereas our figures are the number of people who've stopped and used an e-cigarette to stop minus the proportion who we estimate from the data we've got would have managed to stop anyway in the current environment. Is that clearer, or is that just muddy the waters more?
To be honest, I'm not really sure. I know which figure I prefer. I get why there is this marginal. It's looking at the increase in quitting.
It's the marginal difference. That's the key. Yeah.
Yes. So it's trying to estimate whether or not e-cigs are increasing the quit rate, and what you're saying is that yes, e-cigs are increasing the quit rate by a matter of at least 20,000 a year or thereabouts.
That's our best estimate. You're right, and there's some assumptions that go into that, but that's spot on. Now, people might say, oh well, 20,000 people. That doesn't sound like very much. I'm thinking, what? 20,000 people, that's 10,000 lives saved. Oh my goodness, there are very few things in public health or in clinical medicine that save 10,000 lives on a year. This is, and if, those people happen to be people you care about, then, or you yourself, then they matter even more. So I think that, this is the thing about smoking is, with 9 to 10 million smokers in the United Kingdom and smoking being so incredibly dangerous, even proportionately quite small effects at a population level affect an awful lot of people.
Yeah, well, yes. And in actual fact, if we take the average over 3 years per annum of being around about 17,000. I had a quick look at the figures, and I think my maths is about right there. If we multiply that up by 10 years, that would give us 170,000 over 10 years.
Yeah.
Which I think beats the marginal rate from the stop smoking services, which was about 147,000 over 10 years. I'm sorry to throw that one in, but I had to. There's a little bit of competition here. E-cigs are good.
You see, to me, the competition isn't between different methods of stopping, some of which suit some people and some of which suit other people. It's between stopping smoking and not stopping smoking. And so, to me, I don't know if I've said this to you before, but I see it like this. Most smokers don't want to be smoking. I mean, that's what they tell us, and that's what they show in their behavior. They're looking for an exit in a smoke-filled room. And the more exits we can provide for smokers, the more likely they are to find the one that works for them. And the more we can encourage them to hunt around in this smoke-filled room around the edges for that exit, the more likely people are to find it. So e-cigarettes are clearly making a contribution, but so are the stop smoking services, and so are these other things as well. And so are, for example, websites and so on. And there's just a lot of evidence on this. So I think we should be uniting as people who are interested in public health and in helping people to protect their health, to say, well, look, these are all good, and these are all so much better than so much of the other things that public money is often spent on. It's not a competition. I think we want to support each other, and if we support each other in helping people find ways of stopping smoking, more people will succeed.
Yes, absolutely right. Now, one of the things I have noticed in the graphing on the survey is that there is a downturn in e-cig prevalence and an overall downturn in nicotine use prevalence as well. And I did a little bit of, again, jiggery-pokery with timelines, and I've got my own idea as to what might have caused that downturn in prevalence of e-cigs, but these are your figures, you know what's going on. So what do you reckon the cause is?
I think there's a lot of different possibilities. The truth is, I guess we may never know what the downturn is, but I think one of the obvious things is that people are becoming more concerned about the safety of e-cigarettes because of the kind of comments that are being put out about toxins and so on. And I think this is a matter of concern because when you get very high-profile public figures saying things like e-cigarettes have cadmium and lead and toxins, but without quantifying it and without saying what they know to be the case, which is that with all of these things, the harm from e-cigarettes is going to be order of magnitude or two less than from cigarettes. So without that quantification, what people are left with is the message, oh well, my goodness, e-cigarettes are as dangerous as cigarettes. And in the latest surveys, actually, we've been going backwards with more people believing that e-cigarettes are at least as harmful as cigarettes or saying that they really don't know than we saw a year ago. So that could be one factor. Another factor in the proportion who are using e-cigarettes and smoking, which is where the downturn is occurring, it's dual users where the downturn is occurring, is that, and this is a very interesting thing to me, I'm not sure how effective e-cigarettes are at helping people to cut down the amount they smoke relative to things like patches or whatever. We know that they can be effective at helping people stop smoking completely, but if you're smoking and using an e-cigarette at the same time, there is potentially a problem, which is because e-cigarettes they're quite close to a cigarette in terms of the sensory properties, and that's what makes them attractive. You don't get a deconditioning of the association between the nicotine and those sensory properties, and so people may be finding, well, with the e-cigarette and the cigarette, I'm not making this dissociation between the way I get my nicotine and the harmful way I get my nicotine, which is cigarettes. So what I would like to see is more people using e-cigarettes to stop smoking completely, which I think they're showing that they can be effective to help people do. And I'm not so concerned if people are using e-cigarettes and smoking at the same time. If that figure is dropping, as things stand, I'm less concerned about that. And as I say, I don't think I've explained it terribly well, but
I think actually there's a lot of us that understand the dissociation factor. Certainly, I know Lorian Jolly has repeatedly said that the ability for her to use, I don't know, strawberry custard or caramel vanilla or whatever that tastes nothing like tobacco, and raspberry and all of these other flavours, allow people to not associate as strongly the use of an e-cig with the tobacco flavouring. And let's face it, once you started to get your taste buds back a little bit, flavours become extremely important to an awful lot of people. And I just wonder whether, is it possible to include in the survey some kind of notion as to what flavours people are using. It might be worth, I don't know whether you can work it into the survey, but would some kind of notion of flavour help our understanding of why this prevalence is dropping off?
I think we may well be able to include that in the survey. We're actually, starting in March, we've got funding to extend the toolkit survey in terms of the questions we ask, and we'll be doing follow-ups. So we'll be able to collect a lot more data on this, and we'll report the results as soon as we've got anything. We've got enough numbers to do so. So I think that's a very good idea, and I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to do that. Just on the issue of flavors, I think that people like you and people who use e-cigarettes and people who are thinking of using e-cigarettes need the best information possible on what what is involved in the flavors and whether some of the flavors might contain more harmful chemicals than others. And if they do, you need to know, and then you can decide what you want to do about it. Albeit they're not going to be anything like as harmful as tobacco. But nevertheless, no one wants to put themselves to unnecessary risk. And it's also very interesting what you say about the difference between the flavors and the tobacco flavor, creating that dissociation from smoking, because I think that is important. The more we can dissociate the route by which you get nicotine from the cigarette, then the more we can reduce the risk of a relapse back to cigarettes, or indeed encourage more people to quit in the first place.
Yes, well, when it comes down to relapse risk, I'm rapidly approaching 6 years. In May, 6 years of using e-cigs exclusively. I don't actually consider that to be anything of an achievement, because I think it's very, very easy to do, as long as you've got access to the toys, and it's the toys. And the fact that I get what I need out of them that's kept me where I am, because I was never a quitter. I was a dual user. Every e-cig user is a dual user, or was a dual user for a period. And I think when I got started, there was nobody telling me these things were worse for you than fags. Now I think we have got far too many people with far too much clout getting up there and telling half-truths and lying by omission, and I think they are causing major damage. And I was very pleased to see the piece that you did in one of the academic journals that outlined why these people did not ought to be doing that and why they ought to be telling the truth. So I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you as well for joining me today to run through all of this. I think it'll have clarified it for an awful lot of people. So if I can say thank you very much, Professor Robert J. West, for joining me and filling me in on everything. Thanks so much.
Okay, it's a pleasure, and let's continue the conversation with Twitter and all the other media that we have, because it's really important for people to be as well informed as possible about these things.
Yes, I would agree. I'll see you on Twitter.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Robert.
Cheers.
So there you have it. That was Professor Robert West, and I think a lot of what he had to say was extremely enlightening, and I'm pleased to see that the Smoking Toolkit survey is going to be expanded to bring in flavours, because I do think that that's an area that I know the Smoking Toolkit survey is very well respected worldwide by those who feel the need to control smoking and all sorts of other things. And if, as I'm sure he can, Robert can show the importance of a wide variety of flavours to vapers, not just in the UK, because this is being replicated in the States, or it's starting to be replicated in the States, and it's going into Canada and God knows where else. I think once that information is out there for everybody to see, and it can be shown from a very highly regarded source, then the arguments that we're seeing from those who would control our every breath are more likely to go away. In fact, what I'm seeing now is a situation where, although we have been reactive to what's been going on with e-cigs over the last 4 or 5 years, we're now in a position where, as vapers, as a community, we can be proactive. As in, we got tipped off about Formaldehydegate II, the insurrection. We were tipped off about that, and we were able to rebut it before it was properly published. And that has borne fruit, I think. I mean, I'm seeing the Daily Mail actually writing a balanced piece and more or less saying that Formaldehydegate II was a load of crap. And that's brilliant. We're in a position now, I think, where we have the ability to become proactive as vapers and as advocates. And that, I have to say, makes me a very happy bunny. We've got a couple of minutes to go before the end of the show. I just wanted to remind everybody that on Sunday you need to be wearing orange. If you can get to one of the 4 or 5 meets that are going on around the country, please do. If you can't make it, get something orange and take a picture of yourself wearing orange and vaping and get it uploaded to the websites. The links are all over the place. We'll be clattering them around the place here, there and everywhere. Take part in it. You don't have to go to a meet. If you can, it's great. If you can't, just do a selfie. Everybody know, don't twerk, just do a selfie and post that onto the Facebook groups or onto Twitter, anywhere. Just get it up there so that people can see that you're supporting what's going on. Also, can I please mention the Move manifesto? Again, we've linked to that I don't know how many times over the last week or 2 weeks since it came out, and I'm tweeting it all the time. Please, please, please talk to any medics you know, and any opportunity you get to punt that, please do. I'm going to draw it to a close right there. I have a little voice in my ear who's breathing heavily. I've got no idea why. She's giggling now. I need to apologise for any lack of synchronicity between my mouth and the sound that you are getting. It's going to come across like a Chinese film, but you know, that's the way these things go. It's been a pleasure to share the last hour with you, as it always is. I want to say thank you to everybody that's been watching live, and thank you to everybody that'll be watching video on demand. I find myself in the position tonight where I'm actually quite optimistic about the future. I think we have the upper hand. I think the ANTs, the ANTZ, the anti-nicotine and tobacco zealots are actually on the back foot when it comes to e-cigs. I think we can win the day, but we've got to keep on working hard at it. So, vape on, vape hard, and don't ever let the bastards grind you down. Until I see you next time, take care of each other and enjoy yourselves, because at the end of the day, we're here for a good time, not a long time. See you next time. Take care.
Safercigs.co.uk, sponsors of the Haze Hour.